The gods are dead, and humanity has been alone for far longer than we realize. Walking through the ruins of a divine war, we were never meant to survive, carrying within our myths the faint echoes of that final, cataclysmic silence when the heavens went dark and the world was remade in the image of abandonment. Tonight, we journey into the most forbidden chapter of human memory, a time so ancient that history itself refuses to record it, a threshold moment when the divine presence that once saturated every river, mountain, and storm simply vanished, leaving behind only whispers in clay tablets, cryptic references in sacred texts, and the haunting sensation that something fundamental was severed from the human experience, something we still grieve without knowing why. Welcome to the brand new episode of the channel, The Eternal Odyssey, where we explore the stories of myths and fantasies. Chapter 1, The Last War of Heaven. Every ancient civilization, from the ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the temples of the Nile, from the Vedic hymns of India to the cosmic battles described in Norse mythology, speaks of a time when the gods walked among mortals, when divine beings shaped the land with their hands, and their wars shook the foundations of reality itself. But what these traditions rarely discuss openly is what came after. The moment when the divine presence withdrew not gradually, but suddenly, catastrophically, as if the gods themselves had been defeated or destroyed in a conflict so vast that even their immortality could not protect them. The Sumerian era epic describes a devastating war among the gods that left the world in ruins, a conflict where Era, the god of plague and violence, nearly destroyed all of creation in his rage. And though order was eventually restored, the text hints at something darker, that many gods never returned, that the divine council was shattered, and that the survivors chose exile over remaining in a world that had witnessed their own mortality. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish, we read of Tiamat's death, the primordial goddess whose body was split to create heaven and earth. But this is not merely a cosmological metaphor. It is a memory of deicide, the killing of the divine, and once the first god died, the precedent was set. The immortals could bleed, could fall, could end. The Egyptian Book of the Dead and pyramid texts describe the journey of Ra through the underworld each night, battling the serpent Apophis. Still, in later periods, as Egyptian civilization declined, the texts grow increasingly desperate, as if the gods were losing this eternal battle, as if the light was dimming, the darkness growing stronger, and the rituals that once guaranteed Ra's return became hollow formalities performed by priests who no longer truly believed the sun would rise. The Hindu mythology speaks of the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, when the gods have withdrawn from the world, when Dharma has collapsed, and humanity is left to fend for itself. But this is not described as a temporary phase. It is presented as an irreversible decline, a cosmic autumn leading to an inevitable winter where even the gods cannot save us, because they are no longer present to hear our prayers. The Norse Ragnarok is explicit in its apocalyptic vision that says the gods will die in a final battle against the forces of chaos. Fenrir will devour Odin. Thor will fall to the serpent Jörmungandr, and the world will burn before being drowned. And though the myths speak of a rebirth, a new world emerging from the ashes, the crucial detail is that the old gods do not return. They are gone forever, replaced by their children or by nothing at all. And humanity must face this new world without the divine guardians who once protected them. Chapter 2, The Archaeological Evidence of Divine Absence. You might argue that these are myths, stories told around fires, metaphors for natural phenomena or political upheavals. Yet the archaeological record tells a stranger story, one that suggests a real rupture in human civilization approximately 3,500 to 4,000 years ago, a period marked by widespread collapse, abandonment of cities, and dramatic shifts in religious practice. Around 1200 BC, the Bronze Age collapse devastated the eastern Mediterranean, erasing entire civilizations within decades, such as the Mycenaeans and the Hittites. The great cities like Ugarit burned and never rebuilt. Trade networks spanning continents dissolved, writing systems forgotten, and populations scattered. While historians typically attribute this to invasions, climate change, or economic factors, the religious dimension is often overlooked. This is precisely when the old gods begin to disappear from the archaeological record, when temples are abandoned, when ritual practices are discontinued, when the direct relationship between humanity and the divine seems to break down fundamentally. In Egypt, after the New Kingdom's collapse, the divine kingship that had sustained Egyptian civilization for millennia began to hollow out. The pharaohs are no longer seen as living gods, but as mere mortals claiming a divine mandate they could not substantiate, and the temples, once centers of genuine spiritual power, became political institutions, bureaucracies managing wealth rather than channeling divine presence. In Mesopotamia, the rise of empire under the Assyrians and later the Babylonians marked a shift from the old city-state model, where each city had its patron deity who actively protected it. They shifted to a new paradigm where gods were conquered along with their cities, where divine statues were carried off as war trophies, where the gods themselves seemed subject to human politics and military power, no longer sovereign, no longer truly divine. The biblical prophets of the Axial Age, that revolutionary period between 800 and 200 BCE, when philosophy and monotheism emerged across the world from Greece to China, were not announcing new truths, but responding to a crisis. The old gods had failed, the divine presence had withdrawn, and humanity needed new frameworks to make sense of a world where prayer went unanswered and ritual seemed empty. Whether we look at the Hebrew prophets demanding ethical monotheism, the Greek philosophers seeking truth through reason rather than divine revelation, the Buddha teaching a path to enlightenment without gods, or Confucius focusing on human relationships rather than cosmic forces, we see the same pattern, a turning away from dependence on the divine because the divine was no longer reliably present. Chapter 3, the silence and what it means. The most disturbing element of this neglected era is not the chaos surrounding the gods' exodus, but the profound silence that ensued, reflecting humanity's collective decision to forget or suppress the memory of that abandonment. We have fabricated new mythologies that depict the divine as everlasting and unchanging, when the evidence implies quite the contrary, that there was a distinct before and after, indicating something essential shifted, leading us to spend the last 3 millennia attempting to fill the gap left by that change. Reflect on the curious endurance of cargo cult behavior in religious traditions. We engage in rituals whose original meanings have faded from memory. We recite prayers in languages long dead, that we cannot comprehend, and we erect temples, churches, and mosques atop once sacred sites, dedicated to deities we no longer even mention. It is as though we believe that by preserving these forms, we can somehow resurrect the presence that once imbued them. Yet the deities do not respond because they are absent, and perhaps have been for an incredibly long time. Friedrich Nietzsche famously proclaimed, "God is dead, and we have killed him." But what if he was partially correct? He meant that the influence of religion as the foundation for morality and meaning in Western society has collapsed due to the rise of secularism and scientific thought. What if God, or rather, the myriad divine entities that once filled human existence, perished long before the advent of modernity, the Enlightenment, or the rise of Christianity and Islam? And what we extinguished in the 19th and 20th centuries was not God himself, but simply the final comforting illusion that he had ever existed? This perspective would elucidate the strange nature of contemporary atheism, which feels less like liberation and more akin to mourning. Not an audacious new philosophy, but rather a conclusive acknowledgement of something we have intuited for millennia. That we are isolated, that we have always been isolated, at least since the era of silence commenced, when the last god fell, in that bygone conflict, and the portals of heaven shut eternally. Chapter 4, Living in the Aftermath. Humanity has not merely survived this divine abandonment. We have thrived, built civilizations, created art, and philosophy and science, explored the depths of human potential without divine guidance or intervention. Perhaps this is the greatest revelation of all, that we never needed the gods, as much as we thought we did, that their death, tragic as it may have been, freed us to become fully human, fully responsible for our own fate. The ancient myths, when read with this understanding, become not comforting fairy tales, but survival manuals, instructions left by our ancestors for how to live in a world where the gods are gone. The Stoics teaching self-reliance and acceptance of fate. The Buddhists teaching that suffering ends when we stop clinging to what is impermanent, including the gods themselves. The existentialists teaching that we must create our own meaning in an absurd universe. All of these philosophies are responses to the same fundamental condition: the absence of divine guidance, the silence of the heavens, and the necessity of forging our own path through the darkness. The great religious reformers, such as Moses, Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad, can be understood not as prophets revealing God's will, but as human beings courageously attempting to reconstruct a relationship with the divine in an age when that relationship had been shattered. They have been creating new frameworks, new covenants, and new practices to bridge the unbridgeable gap. And the reason these religions inspire such passion and devotion is not because they succeeded in restoring what was lost, but because they acknowledged the loss and offered a way to move forward despite it, to find meaning and purpose even in a universe where the gods no longer speak. Chapter 5, The Return That Never Comes. Every religion promises a return, a restoration, a day when the divine will break its silence and humanity will once again know we are not alone. The Christians await the second coming, the Jews await the Messiah, the Hindus await Kalki, the next avatar of Vishnu, the Muslims await the day of judgment, and the Norse survivors whisper of the rebirth after Ragnarok. But millennia passed, and the heavens remained silent, and the promised return never came. Perhaps this is because there is nothing to return. Because what died in that ancient war died permanently, irreversibly, and all our waiting is in vain. Or perhaps the return already happened, quietly, without fanfare, in the form of human consciousness itself awakening to its own divine nature, realizing that the gods we worshipped were always projections of our own potential, that the divine spark we sought in heaven was always within us, waiting to be recognized. And the true meaning of the god's death is not that the world has been abandoned, but that it has been bequeathed to us. We are the inheritors, the survivors, the ones who must now decide what to do with this strange, beautiful, terrifying gift of existence without divine supervision. So I leave you with this question. The same question our ancestors must have asked themselves when they realized the gods were not coming back. What will you do with your freedom? How will you live in this silence? What meaning will you create in the absence of cosmic purpose? Because whether the gods died in that ancient war or simply walked away, whether they perished or ascended to some unreachable realm, the result is the same. We are here, they are not. The story of humanity is the story of what we do next. If this exploration into the darkest and most forbidden corners of human mythology has awakened something in you, if you feel the weight of that ancient silence is pressing against your consciousness, then I invite you to join this journey deeper into the mysteries that history has tried to forget. Hit that like button to honor the courage it takes to question what we've been told. Smash that subscribe button because there are so many more buried truths waiting to be unearthed together. And share this video with someone brave enough to peer into the abyss alongside you, because some knowledge is too profound to carry alone. And together, perhaps we can finally make sense of the world the gods left behind. Thank you